The potter's hands froze an inch above the finished bowl. Dawn was already whitening the workshop windows, and the kiln behind him had begun to cool. For the first time in 6 months, he had shaped a vessel thin enough to feel light, balanced enough to rest without rocking, and smooth enough to catch the pale morning like still water. Yet beneath the rim, nearly invisible, one shallow line curved through the clay. He stared until the line seemed wider than a crack in the earth. Then he lifted the bowl and smashed it against the floor. His name was Run, and everyone in the mountain village called him Gifted. He could center a trembling lump of clay with the pressure of 2 fingers. He could raise walls so evenly that other potters stopped working to watch. Even his discarded handles had a grace that apprentices tried to imitate. People often asked when he would sell his work in the market. Ren always gave the same answer:
soon.
Years earlier, he had promised himself that his first fired collection would be extraordinary.
No crooked lips.
No heavy bases.
No careless marks hidden beneath glass.
He imagined travelers carrying his bowls to distant cities, merchants speaking his name with admiration, and masters wondering how someone so young had achieved such control. But every vessel revealed a defect before it reached the kiln. A jar leaned slightly left. A cup bore the faint print of his thumb. A vase narrowed too quickly near the neck. Sometimes the flaw was visible only to Ren. Sometimes he could not name it at all. He merely felt that the piece had failed to become what he had seen in his mind. So he crushed the clay and began again. At first, this discipline impressed the village. Ren worked before sunrise and long after the lamps in neighboring houses went dark. He studied curves in flower petals, shadows on river stones, and the proportions of old temple vessels. He mixed finer clay. He built new tools. He measured every rim with a cord and weighed matching cups against polished stones. His hands improved, but his standards moved farther away. Months became years. Shelves filled with damp pots waiting for his judgment, then emptied before the kiln was lit. Customers stopped asking about his collection. His friends stopped inviting him to festivals because he always remained in the workshop to correct some small imperfection. Even his mother's rice bowl, which he had promised to replace, stayed chipped beside her stove. Ren told himself that delay was the price of excellence. He did not notice that he was no longer making pottery. He was making beginnings. At the edge of the village stood the communal kiln, tended by an old keeper named Sato. His clothes always smelled of cedar smoke, and the skin on his arms bore tiny pale marks left by years of sparks. He spoke little. Each evening, potters brought him rows of cups, jars, plates, and figures. Sato arranged them inside the kiln, leaving enough space for heat to travel between them. Some pieces emerged luminous, some warped. Glazes ran unexpectedly or turned colors no one had planned. Handles cracked. Bowls survived with dark clouds across their surfaces. Sato placed every finished piece on the long stone bench outside, where its maker could meet what the fire had made. Ren rarely visited him. Fire introduced uncertainty, and uncertainty offended the careful world Ren was trying to build. One autumn afternoon, the village council commissioned 12 water jars for a new roadside shelter. The other potters were busy preparing goods for the winter market, so Wren accepted the work. The jars were simple, and the council needed them within 30 days. Wren believed the order would force him to finish. He shaped the first jar in a single afternoon. Its walls rose strong and clean. Near the base, however, a slight hollow disturbed the curve. He cut the jar open and returned the clay to the soaking barrel. The second jar pleased him until he saw that its mouth was wider on one side by the breadth of a grain of rice. The third had a tiny stone buried beneath the surface. The fourth was almost perfect, but almost had become the word Wren feared most. By the 20th day, he had completed nothing. The council messenger came to ask about the order. Wren covered his empty shelves with cloth and promised that all 12 jars would be delivered. After the messenger left, he worked through the night. He shaped jar after jar, moving with a speed that frightened him. By sunrise, 6 vessels stood before him. They were sturdy. They would hold water. Each one also carried evidence of the hurried hands that had formed it. Wren examined the first jar and reached for his cutting wire. A shadow crossed the doorway. Sado entered carrying a basket of kiln wood. He looked at the 6 jars, then at the broken clay gathering around Wren's feet. Without speaking, he set down the basket. Wren expected criticism. Instead, Sado lifted the smallest jar. One side was flatter than the other, and 2 finger marks remained near its shoulder. Wren tried to take it back, but the old keeper turned and walked toward the kiln. Wren followed, protesting that the jar was unfinished. Sado continued across the yard. Wren warned that the walls might warp. The keeper opened the kiln, placed the jar among the work of other potters, and sealed the chamber. Once the fire had been fed, nothing could be reclaimed. Wren spent the day circling the kiln. Anger rose in him each time flames flashed through the vents. Sado had taken the choice from him. Worse, the flawed jar would soon become permanent. Wet clay could be crushed, softened, and used again. Fired clay remembered every mistake. The kiln burned through the night. Sado adjusted the vents, added wood, and watched the color of the heat. He offered Wren no defense and no lesson. When dawn came, he closed the firebox and went home to sleep. They waited another day for the kiln to cool. When Sado finally broke the seal, warm air carrying the scent of ash drifted into the yard. He removed each piece with steady hands. Wren's jar stood near the back. The fire had changed it. Its pale glaze had deepened to the gray-blue of rain clouds. The 2 finger marks held darker pools of color, as if someone had pressed evening shadows into the surface. Along the flattened side, the glaze had broken into a delicate pattern resembling reeds beside a river. The jar was not symmetrical. It was not what Wren had intended. It was also more alive than anything he had allowed himself to finish. Wren searched for praise or explanation in Sado's face. The keeper gave neither. He carried the jar to the village well, filled it with water, and set it on the stone wall. Then he returned to Wren's workshop. On the highest shelf stood another jar, perfectly shaped but still raw. Ren had kept it there for weeks, uncertain whether the curve beneath its neck was gentle enough. Sato brought that jar to the well and placed it beside the fired one. He filled both to the rim. For a few moments, they seemed equal. Then water darkened the raw clay. The perfect jar softened. Its base sagged, its wall folded inward, and clear water poured across the stones. The fired jar remained standing. Sunlight trembled on the water it held. Sato picked up his empty bucket and walked back toward the kiln. Ren stayed beside the well until the stones dried. The next morning, he entered his workshop and uncovered the remaining 5 jars. Every old impulse returned. He saw the uneven shoulder, the thick rim, the faint scrape left by a wooden tool. His mind offered a familiar bargain. Destroy these, it urged, and the next ones may be worthy. Ren carried the jars to the kiln. He did not suddenly become careless. He still trimmed rough bases and repaired cracks that threatened a vessel's strength. He still practiced curves and tested glazes, but he began to distinguish between a pot that could not serve and a pot that merely failed to match the flawless image in his mind. He fired all 5 jars. 2 warped slightly. 1 developed a thin crack and could not hold water. The others survived, each marked differently by flame. Ren made 7 more, fired those 2, and delivered 12 useful jars to the roadside shelter 9 days late. Travelers drank from them for years. Ren's first market table did not draw a crowd. Some bowls sold, others did not. A merchant complained that 2 cups were mismatched. A child chose the cheapest bowl because a blue streak looked like a running fox. Ren felt embarrassment, disappointment, relief, and pride, sometimes within the same breath. Those feelings no longer stopped the kiln. With every firing, his work taught him something that imagination alone had concealed. A handle that looked elegant might be uncomfortable to hold. A heavy cup might keep tea warm. A glaze he considered ruined might delight someone else. Completion exposed him to judgment, but it also returned information. The fire did not certify perfection. It revealed reality. Years later, apprentices came to study in Ren's workshop. They expected a master surrounded by flawless vessels. Instead, they found shelves of experiments, cracked glaze tests, leaning cups, sturdy jars, and a single gray-blue pot with 2 finger marks near its shoulder. Whenever an apprentice hovered over a finished piece, searching for permission to destroy it, Ren did not deliver a speech. He carried the piece to the kiln, opened the door, and left an empty place among the other pots. The same empty place appears far from any pottery village. Mara sat in a quiet office long after her colleagues had gone home. On her screen waited a proposal she had revised for 3 weeks. Each reading produced another adjustment. 1 sentence sounded too plain. 1 chart might invite criticism. The opening could be sharper. She had begun calling the delay preparation, though it felt increasingly like hiding. Her hand moved toward the file menu to begin another revision. Then she noticed the small gray cup beside her keyboard, made at a weekend pottery class. Its rim dipped on one side, and her fingerprints remained under the glaze. She had almost crushed it before the instructor placed it in the kiln. Mara poured the last of her water into the cup. It held. She sent the proposal. At home that evening, she opened a message to her brother. They had spoken awkwardly months before, and she had drafted several perfect apologies without sending any. She deleted the polished paragraphs and wrote 3 honest sentences. Her thumb paused above the screen, feeling the old wish to control every possible response. She looked at the uneven cup drying beside the sink and pressed send. The proposal later needed changes. Her brother did not answer until the next morning. Neither act produced the smooth, immediate results she had imagined. Yet the work could now be improved, and the relationship could now move. What had remained safe and unfinished had finally entered the fire of reality. A flawless pot that never reaches the kiln can hold nothing. The marked vessel, once fired, can carry water to someone who is thirsty. Keep this lesson with you and return whenever your mind needs a quieter path.